Today we leave the present behind and walk together through memories that are no longer our own. Feel the cool morning breeze against your skin as we journey to the banks of the ancient Nile, where the greatest monuments to human ambition slowly rose toward the heavens. If you feel this journey touches your night, consider joining us again, and tell us where you are listening from. Now, silence the world around you, dim the lights, and breathe deeply. We are about to dream of the past. Wake before Ri's golden face peaks above the eastern horizon. The air holds that particular coolness that exists only in the brief moment between night and day along the great river. That sacred transition when Nut, the sky goddess, gives birth to the sun once more. My body remembers the hour even before. My eyes open, trained by years of the same rhythm, the same purpose. I am Nebamun, a stoneworker in the service of the living Horus, Pharaoh Khufu, whose eternal home rises a little higher each day beneath our hands. The reed mat beneath me crackles softly as I rise, careful not to disturb my wife, Nefert, still, curled in sleep beside me. Our modest dwelling sits among hundreds of others in the workers' village, simple structures of mud brick that house those who build for eternity. Unlike the grand monuments we create, our homes are temporary things, practical shelters for bodies that will one day return to the embrace of the black soil. Kay and Ba journeying onward while our work remains. Outside, the first hints of dawn transform the Nile from black ribbon to liquid silver. Mist hovers above the water like the breath of Hapi, the river god, blessing the narrow strip of fertile land that makes life possible in this harsh realm. In that gentle fog, the distant shape of the great house, the pyramid that has consumed nearly 15 floods of my life, appears ghostly, unfinished yet already eternal. Each morning, that first glimpse reminds me why we labor. It is not merely stone upon stone, but the construction of forever. Others emerge from their dwellings, faces still soft with sleep, but hands already hardened by years of purpose. We exchange quiet greetings, conversations kept low in respect for the sacred transition from darkness to light. The village slowly awakens, children stretching into consciousness, women preparing morning meals, men gathering tools for the day's labor. We are not slaves, as some tales may one day claim, but free men who serve the divine order, Ma'at, through the work of our hands. The Western Stone crew needs 5 more men today, calls Imhotep, our crew leader, his voice carrying authority earned through 25 floods of experience. The northern face reaches the 100-cubit mark with today's stones. Though we work with our hands, we are not without knowledge or skill. Each of us carries precise understanding of stone, of weight and balance, of how to speak to granite and limestone until they surrender to human intention. My father taught me to listen to the stone's voice, to feel where it wants to be cut, how it wishes to break. This wisdom flows through generations of hands, just as the Nile flows through the black land, bringing life where it touches. I splash water from a clay basin onto my face, the coolness fully awakening my senses. Nefert appears beside me, offering a small loaf of bread and a cup of thin beer, simple sustenance that will carry me through the morning's work. We share few words but much understanding in these early moments. Her fingers brush mine as she hands me the food. A small intimacy that contains all that needs to be said between us. May Khnum strengthen your arms today, she murmurs, invoking the ram-headed god who forms people on his potter's wheel. It is the same blessing she has offered each morning since we joined our lives together. May Hathor fill your hours with song, I reply, completing our daily ritual before joining the stream of men moving toward the worksite. The path to the pyramid stretches before us, worn smooth by thousands of feet, making this same journey day after day, year after year. We walk in loose groups, some still silent in the grip of early morning, others beginning the stories and jokes that make our burden lighter. Ahead, The growing monument catches the first direct rays of sunlight, its eastern face blazing golden while the other sides remain in shadow. The sight never fails to catch my breath, to remind me that though I am but one man who will live and die in the blink of Ri's eye, I participate in something that will speak to eternity. They say the pharaoh came in his carrying chair yesterday, to observe the work, mentioned Senbi, a younger man who works alongside me setting the outer casing stones. He stayed until sunset, watching the alignment with the western stars. The alignment must be perfect, adds Kui, whose knowledge of ropes and measuring tools makes him invaluable to our crew. The house of the living Horus must mirror the pattern of the imperishable stars where he will journey after this life. As we near the base of the great structure, the scale of our work becomes increasingly apparent. Stone blocks taller than a man, weighing more than 20 oxen, yet fitted together with gaps no wider than a reed's breadth. Ramps of packed earth spiral upward, pathways for the stones that still make their journey from distant quarries. Already, the base covers an area that could hold 10 villages like our own, and still it rises, day by day, cubit by cubit, toward its destined height. The morning crews organize according to their tasks, quarrymen departing for the stone beds, haulers preparing the sledges and ropes, setters checking their copper tools and levels. I join my crew at the stone finishing area, where rough-cut blocks receive their final shaping before being raised into position. Today, we will prepare the 190th stone for the northern face's outer casing, a piece of fine white limestone that must fit perfectly against its neighbors to create the smooth, brilliant surface that will eventually cover the entire structure. As I pick up my copper chisel and wooden mallet, I feel the familiar weight settling into my hands. Like old friends, the stone before me waits, patient as the desert itself, for the conversation we will have throughout this day. With each strike, each careful removal of excess material, I bring it closer to its destiny. No longer mere stone, but part of something that will outlast kingdoms and gods themselves. The sun climbs higher, burning away the last wisps of morning mist. Another day of creation begins. In this moment, between the cool promise of dawn and the heat of full day, I feel the peculiar peace that comes from knowing exactly what must be done and having the skill to accomplish it. My hands know their purpose. My life has meaning written in stone. I am a builder of eternity, and my story is just beginning. My hands speak a language known only to those who shape stone. Look at them. These are not the soft, unmarked hands of a scribe or priest, but living tools shaped by the very material they shape in turn. The skin is thickened where the chisel rests against my palm, calloused ridges that have built up over years, like the sediment layers of the Nile Delta. Small white scars mark where stone chips have bitten into my flesh, each one a memory of a moment when the rock spoke back too sharply. These hands remember what the mind sometimes forgets, exactly how much pressure to apply to split limestone along its hidden seam, the precise angle at which to strike granite to remove a flake no thicker than a papyrus leaf. They know by touch alone whether a surface is truly flat or still holds imperfections invisible to the eye. My father once told me that a true stoneworker could work blindfolded, letting his fingers see for him. After 20 years of this labor, I understand his wisdom. The marks of my profession extend beyond my hands. My forearms have thickened into ropes of muscle that rarely tire even after a full day of wielding mallet and chisel. My shoulders have broadened from lifting and turning. Stone blocks. Even my stance has changed, feet planted wide and solid as the foundation stones of the great house itself, ready to absorb the shock of each strike against unyielding material. Show me your hands, and I will tell you your worth, says Imhotep, when assessing a new worker. Soft hands mean an untested man, one who may flee back to the fields when he discovers how stone demands not just strength, but patience and precision. The blisters will come first, painful, fluid-filled bubbles that burst and leave the skin raw and bleeding. Then the first layer of callus, still tender but beginning to armor the flesh. Only after a full season of work do the hands truly become those of a stoneworker, instruments as specialized as the copper tools we use. Senbi, working beside me on the same great block of limestone, pauses to stretch his fingers. He is young, only recently moved from hauling stones to the more skilled work of shaping them. His hands still show the transition, the calluses of rope work now giving way to the specific hardening that comes from hours with chisel and mallet. "Does it ever stop hurting?" he asks me, flexing fingers stiffened by yesterday's labor. "The pain changes," I answer truthfully. "It becomes like the sound of the river or children playing in the village, something always present but rarely noticed unless you turn your attention to it." We work in comfortable silence for a time, the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of our tools creating a percussive hymn to creation. Around us, dozens of other men do the same, each focused on their own piece of what will become unified wholeness. The sound of stonework has its own music, the sharp ping of copper against limestone, the deeper thunk of wooden mallets on setting tools, the rasp of stone against stone as blocks are checked for fit, and beneath it all, the constant shush, shush, shush of sand being used to smooth surfaces to perfection. My hands know this music in their bones, can feel when a note is off, when a rhythm falters. They adjust automatically, finding the perfect tempo that allows for precision without exhaustion. This wisdom lives not in my thoughts, but in my flesh, passed down through generations of men who have shaped stone into monuments, temples, and eternal homes for those who walk with the gods. At midday, when we pause for our ration of bread and beer, I notice Senbi studying my hands as I tear the dense loaf. "Will my hands ever look like yours?" he asks, comparing his newer calluses to my weathered ones. "Every stoneworker's hands tell their own story," I tell him. "See here?" I point to a particularly thick hardening at the base of my thumb. That came from 3 seasons spent on the outer casing stones of the northern face. And this, I show him a curved callus along my forefinger. From years of guiding the copper saw through limestone to create the perfect seam. And that? He points to a puckered scar that runs across my palm. Ah. I smile at the memory, though it wasn't pleasant when it happened. That was from my 5th year, when I was still too confident and not yet wise. I tried to catch a falling splinter of granite rather than stepping aside as my father had taught me. The stone remembers, and it taught me respect. Our overseer signals the end of the brief rest, and we return to our work, the conversation fading, but the awareness remaining. As I take up my tools again, I feel a moment of connection with every man who has ever shaped stone in the service of eternity. From those who built the first mastabas in our grandfather's time, to those who will continue raising monuments long after I have joined the ancestors in the western lands. My hands move with their accumulated wisdom, guiding the copper edge to just the right spot, applying precisely the right force. With each strike, I leave more than marks on stone. I leave the imprint of humanity's reach toward permanence. These calluses and scars are my contribution to something greater than myself. Testament that I existed, that I created, that I served, the divine order through the work of my hands. As the day progresses, my hands seem to remember skills my conscious mind never properly learned. They feel the hidden structure of the stone, sense where it will yield, and where it will resist. This is the deepest magic of the craftsman, when the boundary between creator and creation softens, when the conversation between person and material becomes so intimate that it transcends ordinary understanding. By day's end, my hands will ache, with honest tiredness, perhaps sport a new nick or scrape to join the collection of marks that map my life's work. Yet they will wake tomorrow ready to continue their dialogue with stone. to keep teaching the next generation the language written in callus and scar tissue, to remain instruments of creation until they finally lay down their tools and rest in the quiet darkness of eternity's embrace. For now, though, they remain in motion, steady, purposeful, alive with the knowledge that only those who shape stone can truly understand. The stars still hung in Nut's dark body when Pharaoh's dream came to him. So the priests tell us. Khufu, the living Horus, awakened suddenly in the depth of night, his Ka having walked with the gods to receive the vision of what must be built. Not merely a tomb, the ignorant may call it such in ages to come, but a machine for ascension, a stairway allowing his divine spirit to climb to the imperishable stars, where he would join Re in his solar boat for the eternal journey. We hear these stories as we work, passed along from the priests to the overseers, from the overseers to the craftsmen, from the craftsmen to even the humblest laborer. The vision guides our hands, giving purpose to each drop of sweat that falls upon the limestone. This is not mere construction, it is creation in service to divine order. The great house must align perfectly with the northern star that never moves, explains Hemiunu, the vizier and chief architect, during one of his inspections. Though he speaks to the overseers, many of us pause in our work to listen. Its passages must point to the specific stars through which our great pharaoh's Ba will travel. Its very proportions must reflect the sacred measurements that maintain Mot in the cosmos. I may be but a simple stoneworker, but I understand enough to know that what we build is as much star map as monument. The priests who study the night sky have charted the paths of celestial bodies with astonishing precision, knowledge preserved and refined across hundreds of generations. They determine the exact orientation each wall must follow, the precise angle of each passageway, even the specific height the structure must reach to fulfill its sacred purpose. Why must we be so exact? I once heard a new worker ask, his arms trembling from a day of positioning stones that must fit with spaces no wider than a grain of wheat between them. Because the stars are exact, replied the overseer without hesitation. The gods do not tolerate imperfection in their domain, and neither can we in what we build for them. Indeed, the precision demanded of us sometimes seems beyond human capability. Yet we achieve it through the accumulation of knowledge passed down through generations of builders, through careful measurement and constant checking, through the development of tools and techniques that allow mere mortals to create divine perfection on Earth. As I cut a channel into a block that will help guide it into perfect alignment with its neighbor, I think about the visions that flow from Pharaoh's divine connection, through the sacred knowledge of the priests, through the mathematical brilliance of the architects, and finally to the practical skill of stoneworkers like myself. Each has its place in the great chain that connects heaven's design to Earth's execution. The specifications for each stone are not matters of rough approximation, but precise measurements determined by the sacred cubit. The length from a man's elbow to the tip of his extended middle finger, but not just any man. The royal cubit is taken from the arm of Pharaoh himself, the living embodiment of divine order on Earth. All our measuring rods are crafted to this exact length, checked against the master rod kept by the royal architects, which itself is verified, against the original kept in the temple. This divine vision manifests in astonishing detail. The great house will rise to a height of 280 cubits, with each side of its square base measuring 440 cubits. These are not arbitrary numbers, but carefully chosen proportions that echo cosmic relationships. The slope of each face must rise at precisely the same angle, one palm of run for each cubit of rise, creating the perfect, triangular face that points like a solidified sunbeam toward the sky. Even more remarkable are the internal passages and chambers, hidden from view but crucial to the structure's sacred function. The descending passage points to the North Star, creating an eternal connection to the fixed point around which the heavens revolve. The ascending passage aligns with the position of important stars in the constellation the priests call the imperishable ones, the stars that never sink below the horizon but circle endlessly in the northern sky. The king's chamber must be positioned precisely, I overheard the architects discussing during their daily inspection. Its placement is determined by both terrestrial and celestial considerations, centered within the mass of the great house, while aligned with specific star positions. This is why we measure thrice before cutting once, why we check each stone's position against plumb lines and square corners, why we smooth each surface until no imperfection remains. We are not merely stacking stones, we are creating a perfect reflection of cosmic order, a machine designed to launch our divine ruler into his eternal afterlife among the stars. Sometimes in the evening, after the day's work is done, I sit outside my humble dwelling and look up at the same stars that dictate the design of what we build. They wheel slowly overhead, predictable in their movements, eternal in their presence. I try to see what the priests see, not just points of light, but a map of divine realm, a guide for both the living and the dead. The contrast between their permanence and my own brief existence is not lost on me. I am like a mayfly, existing for but a moment in the great span of time. Yet, through my contribution to this eternal monument, I participate in something that will reach toward those same stars long after my body has returned to the dark earth and my Ka has completed its own journey to the western lands. This, perhaps, is the true genius of Pharaoh's vision, not merely to create his own path to eternity, but to allow thousands of ordinary men to touch immortality through the work of their hands. With each perfectly placed stone, with each precisely cut block, we do more than build a monument. We participate in the divine order that governs both heaven and earth. As I return to my work, checking the alignment of a casing stone against the master angle tool, I feel connected to this grand vision. Though I may never understand all the astronomical calculations or theological principles that guide the design, my hands help make them manifest in stone. In this way, the divine dream that visited our pharaoh flows through me into physical reality. Stars and stone joined through human effort in service to eternal purpose. Our village rises from the desert's edge like a cluster of mud-colored mushrooms after rare rain. Not grand or beautiful to outside eyes, perhaps, but to those of us who have built it with our own hands, who have watched it grow from temporary camp to established community, it holds beauty all its own. Thousands of us dwell here. Stoneworkers, haulers, rope makers, carpenters, cooks, brewers, bakers, weavers, all those needed to create not just the great house itself, but the living community that sustains its creation. I walk the narrow paths between dwellings as the day's last light fades, nodding to neighbors, exchanging brief greetings. Unlike the temporary camps of seasonal farmers who come during the inundation to help with hauling stones, our village has permanence. Many of us have lived here for most of our adult lives, raising children who themselves become part of the great work. Some will remain for their entire lives, their bodies eventually resting in the simple cemetery beyond the village's western edge. My own dwelling sits in the section reserved for skilled stoneworkers, a modest structure, but larger than those allocated to common laborers. Its walls rise from mud bricks we formed ourselves during rest days, mixed with straw for strength and dried in the hot sun. The roof is wooden beams overlaid with woven reed mats sealed with more mud. Simple, functional, yet home in all the ways that matter. Neba Moon, come share our evening meal, calls Seshemnefer, my neighbor whose wife Henutsen is known throughout the village for her skill with vegetables and spices. Henutsen has prepared lentils with leeks, and there is fresh bread. This is the true wealth of our community, not gold or fine linen, but the bonds between those who work toward common purpose. We share what we have, support those who fall ill or suffer injury, celebrate births and mourn deaths together. The work binds us, but it is these human connections that transform mere proximity into true community. Inside Seshemnefer's dwelling, several families have already gathered. seated on woven mats around a central space where food is being distributed in simple pottery bowls. Children play in corners or help serve the meal, the youngest falling asleep against their mother's sides, exhausted from days spent in play or in learning their future trades from patient elders. "How progresses the northern face?" asks Ipuwer, an older stone setter whose damaged hand has recently moved him to supervisory work. "I heard the 100-cubit mark was reached today." "Indeed," I confirm, accepting a bowl of steaming lentils from Hennitzen with a grateful nod. "The outer casing blocks are being set now. Tomorrow we begin another course." Conversation flows like the gentle current of the Nile during low water. Steady, life-sustaining, connecting each to all. We speak of the day's work, share stories of particularly challenging stones conquered or minor injuries sustained. News passes from household to household. A birth in the ropemaker's quarter, a marriage arrangement between families, word from traders about conditions in the wider two lands. Unlike the grand houses of nobles in Memphis, our dwellings are primarily for sleeping and shelter from the elements. Much of our life happens in these communal gatherings or in shared outdoor spaces where bread is baked in community ovens, clothes are washed, and children are minded collectively while parents work. Privacy is a luxury few desire and fewer expect. Our lives are as interconnected as the stones we set. "My youngest has shown skill with the measuring cord," Seshemnefer mentions proudly. "The overseer of apprentices has taken notice and suggested he might be trained for more skilled work when he comes of age." Such announcements bring congratulations and approving nods. Though social mobility is limited in our ordered society, there remains room for talent to be recognized and nurtured. A common laborer's son might become a skilled craftsman. A stoneworker's daughter might marry into a scribe's family. The great work creates opportunities not found in farming villages where generations follow identical paths. After eating, we move outside to enjoy the cooling evening air. Some men play senet on boards, scratched into stone, moving their pieces with the strategic thinking that serves them well in planning the movement of massive blocks. Others play music on simple reed, flutes or improvised drums, the melodies carrying ancient rhythms that echo the patterns of our work. Women gather to spin flax into thread or weave simple fabrics, their fingers never idle even in rest. Children dart between dwellings in games of chase, their laughter a counterpoint to the deeper tones of adult conversation. They know no other life than this one. Born in the shadow of the growing monument, their earliest memories filled with the sounds of stone being worked, their games often mimicking the labor they see adults perform. To them, building the great house is simply the natural order of things, as inevitable as the Nile's annual flood. "Will you tell us a story, Nebamun?" asks a small boy who has paused in his play. Several other children gather, sensing the potential for entertainment. "Tell us of the time before the great house began." I smile, for this is a favorite request. Though none of these children were born when work commenced, they love hearing of how the vast, flat foundation was prepared, how the first massive blocks were positioned with such precision that a knife blade cannot pass between them, how the alignments were established using the stars as guides. "When I was not much older than you," I begin, settling more comfortably on my reed mat as the children gather close. "The land where the great house now stands was simply flat desert. Then one night, Pharaoh, may he live forever, received a vision from the gods." The children listen with wide eyes, though they've heard variations of this tale many times before. It connects them to something larger than themselves, helps them understand their place in the great unfolding of divine purpose. Even the adults pause in their activities to listen, finding comfort in the familiar narrative that gives meaning to our days of labor. As night fully claims the sky, lamps are lit inside dwellings, simple clay vessels with linen wicks floating in castor oil. Their gentle light spills from doorways and small windows, creating pools of warmth against the desert darkness. One by one, families bid goodnight and return to their homes, exhausted bodies seeking rest before tomorrow's labor begins anew. Walking back to my own dwelling, where Nefert will have prepared our sleeping mats and set out water for morning washing. I feel the particular contentment that comes from being part of something meaningful. Our village may be humble compared to the eternity we build during daylight hours, but it contains its own form of immortality. The continuing cycles of human connection, the passing of knowledge and story from one generation to the next, the cumulative wisdom of thousands of lives dedicated to common purpose. This too is a monument of sorts, though built of more perishable materials than limestone and granite. It lives in the connections between us, in the community we have formed, in service to something greater than ourselves. When I finally lie down beside Nefert, her breathing already deep in sleep, I carry this knowledge with me into dreams, that we build more than a pathway to the stars for Pharaoh. We build a way of living that honors both the gods above and the humanity within us. Morning arrives with the call of the wakeners moving through the village, their voices pulling us from sleep toward another day of creation. The transition from dreaming to waking is brief for those accustomed to labor's rhythm. My body rises, almost before my mind fully awakens, hands automatically reaching for the simple linen kilt that is my work clothing. Nefert is already up, tending the small fire in our dwelling's corner that warms the flat bread for our morning meal. The scent of baking fills our modest home, mingling with the earthy smell of the mud brick walls and the faint sweetness of dried herbs hanging from the rafters. This quiet moment before joining the stream of workers heading toward the great house is a treasure I have learned to appreciate through the years. "Eat well," Nefert says, handing me a warm disk of bread and a pottery cup filled with thin beer. The bread is fresh ground from yesterday's ration. This simple meal is the foundation upon which the great house rises, multiplied by thousands of workers, consumed day after day, year after year. The cultivation, harvest, processing, and distribution of food requires as much organization as the movement of stone blocks. Fields throughout the two lands contribute their bounty to feed those who build for eternity. The bread is dense and filling, made from emmer wheat ground on stone querns by the women of our village, and mixed with water and a bit of starter kept alive for generations. Not the fine white bread that graces Pharaoh's table, but wholesome and strengthening. The beer, too, is essential, safer to drink than water from canals, providing both hydration and additional nourishment through the day. As I tear the warm bread, I contemplate how this simple disk connects me to the wider web of existence in our ordered society. The farmers who tended the wheat fields, the harvesters who gathered the grain, the boats and their crews who transported it to the royal granaries, the officials who recorded and distributed the rations, the women who ground and baked it, all are participants in the great work, their contributions as necessary as those who cut and place the stones. These thoughts continue as I join the procession of workers making their way toward the work site. The morning ration we carry will be supplemented by midday and evening meals, prepared in the large communal kitchens near the construction site. No worker goes hungry. Pharaoh understands that well-fed men work better than those weakened by insufficient nourishment. They say the royal brewery sent special beer for today's completion of the 100th course, mentions Kui as we walk together. Stronger than our usual ration, to honor the achievement. A welcome reward, responds Senbi with youthful enthusiasm. Though one must be careful not to become too celebratory while still handling stone, the older men laugh knowingly. Experience has taught us all the delicate balance between enjoying the strength and mild euphoria that beer provides, and maintaining the clear head necessary for dangerous work. The beer we drink through the day is intentionally light, enough to provide energy and safe hydration without clouding judgment or slowing reflexes. We arrive at the distribution area, where overseers check our name markings against their records. before issuing the day's first ration. Each work crew receives their allocation together, fostering both camaraderie and mutual accountability. None wish to see their fellows shorted, and none would take more than their share. The granaries reported record harvest in the Delta regions this year, comments the distribution overseer as he marks our receipt in his papyrus roll. The gods have blessed our work with abundance. This news brings satisfied nods. Though we work far from the fields, we understand our dependence on agricultural success. In years when the Nile's inundation falls short and harvests suffer, even the great work must adjust, sometimes slowing progress when rations must be reduced. The perfect order represented in the precise angles and measurements of the great house extends to the systems that feed its builders. With our morning sustenance secured, we collect our tools and proceed to our assigned positions. Today, my crew will continue fitting the outer casing stones on the northern face, work requiring concentration and precision. The limestone blocks must align perfectly, their outer surfaces sloped at exactly the same angle, their joins so precise that moisture cannot penetrate. By mid-morning, the sun has claimed the sky, its heat intensifying with each passing hour. Sweat runs freely down backs and chests, soaking into linen kilts and dripping onto thirsty stone. Water carriers move constantly among the work crews, their large pottery vessels providing necessary refreshment, like the bread and beer that fuel our bodies. This water represents another carefully managed resource, drawn from wells or brought by canal from the Nile, then distributed according to need throughout the massive work site. When the sun reaches its highest point, a signal sounds, a distinctive pattern beaten on large copper discs that can be heard throughout the construction area. Work pauses as crews make their way to designated areas where the midday meal awaits. Unlike the morning bread eaten at home or carried to the site, this meal is prepared in the large field kitchens that operate continuously to feed thousands. We sit in the shade of partially completed structures or temporary shelters, grateful for the respite from direct sunlight. The meal is simple but satisfying. More bread, often softened in broth containing vegetables, and occasionally small pieces of fish from the Nile or dried meat. Onions, garlic, and leeks feature prominently, their sharp flavors appreciated for both taste and the strength they provide. "The fish is good today," observes Imhotep, our crew leader, as he tears his bread into his bowl. "The river has been generous, as has Pharaoh," adds an older worker named Kamwasit. "I remember when I first joined the great work in my father's time. The rations were smaller then, before the current systems were perfected." Conversation flows easily during this brief respite, men discussing their morning progress, sharing news from other parts of the vast construction, occasionally telling jokes that provoke bursts of laughter. Despite the enormity of our task and the physical demands it places on our bodies, these moments of community and nourishment maintain the spirit needed to continue year after year. I watch the younger workers, particularly those in their first year at the great house, still adjusting to the rhythm of work and rest, of exertion and replenishment. Some eat too quickly, eager to make use of every moment of rest for actual resting. The veterans know better, eating slowly, chewing thoroughly, allowing both body and mind to absorb nourishment before returning to labor. "Always respect your bread," my father taught me when I first joined him on the great work. It contains the life of the two lands, the blessing of the Nile, the labor of many hands, and the benevolence of Pharaoh. Without it, no stone would rise, no monument would stand. As I finish my portion, I silently acknowledge this wisdom. The massive blocks of stone that form the great house may be its visible substance, but it is truly built of bread and beer, the daily sustenance that flows through our bodies, becoming strength in our arms, endurance in our backs, and determination in our spirits. The meal concludes. Pottery bowls are collected for cleaning and reuse, and workers rise to return to their stations. The afternoon will bring the day's most challenging labor, as heat builds and morning energy wanes. Yet our replenished bodies move with purpose, carrying within them the converted energy of grain grown in black soil, of vegetables nurtured by the river's gift of water that sustains all life. By day's end, when work finally ceases and we return to our village, we will have transformed this simple sustenance into eternal monument. Bread and beer becoming stone upon stone, reaching toward the heavens where Pharaoh will one day journey among the imperishable stars. Stone speaks to those who know how to listen. This truth was among the first lessons my father taught me when I was still a boy watching him work. Too small yet to hold the heavy copper tools, but old enough to begin learning the knowledge that would eventually become my life. Each stone has a voice, he would say, running his calloused hand across a freshly cut surface of limestone. It tells you where it wants to be split, how it wishes to be shaped. The poor craftsman forces his will upon the stone. The master hears what the stone itself desires. I thought it mere poetic fancy then, an old man's attempt to make routine, labor sound mystical. Now, with 20 years of working stone behind me, I understand the concrete truth behind his words. Stone does speak, not in sounds for the ear, but in subtle signals that the experienced hand and eye learn to perceive. This morning, as I begin work on a particularly challenging block of fine white limestone destined for the outer casing, I recall these lessons. The block before me is larger than 3 men standing together, quarried from the cliffs across the river and transported by boat and sledge to this very spot. It appears solid, perfect, yet I know it contains hidden structure, planes of weakness, minute crystal arrangements, perhaps even fossils of creatures that lived when the stone was merely mud at the bottom of some ancient sea. I place my palm flat against its surface, feeling the coolness that stone maintains even as the day grows warmer. With eyes half closed, I let my hand drift across the smooth face, fingers sensitized by years of such work detecting almost imperceptible variations in texture. There, a slightly different resonance when I tap gently with my copper chisel, indicating a natural seam that will guide my cutting. "You've found its secret already?" asks Senbi, the younger worker assigned to assist me today. He watches with the particular intensity of someone who genuinely wishes to learn, not merely to complete assigned tasks. "The stone is always willing to reveal itself," I reply, marking the discovered line with a thin streak of red ochre. "But it rarely shouts. You must learn to hear its whispers." Different stones speak different dialects. Soft limestone, the pale, fine-grained stone we use for the outer casing, communicates most readily, yielding to tools with minimal resistance when approached correctly. Harder limestone requires more forceful conversation but still responds to proper technique. Granite, the red-flecked stone used for special elements like portcullises and certain chambers, speaks a more difficult language, resistant to all, but the most patient and persistent questioning. I guide Senbi in setting the copper saw along the marked line. We pour water mixed with sand onto the stone, the abrasive particles enhancing the saw's cutting ability. Then begins the rhythmic back-and-forth motion, the copper blade sliding through the mixture, gradually eating its way into the stone. The process is slow, deliberate, almost meditative in its steady repetition. "Listen to the sound," I instruct Senbi as we work. "When it changes even slightly, it tells you something important about what lies ahead in the stone." The saw produces a soft, gritty whisper as it cuts. Not the harsh screech of metal against stone that the uninitiated might expect, but something more akin to a continuous sigh. This sound becomes so familiar to stoneworkers that any variation immediately alerts us to potential problems or opportunities within the stone's hidden structure. Across the work area, different conversations with stone occur simultaneously. Some craftsmen use hammer and chisel to remove excess material in careful, measured strikes. Others employ copper drills with sand abrasives to create holes for lifting posts. The more experienced workers shape the final surfaces using stones, of progressively finer grain as abrasives, achieving a smoothness that almost gleams without being polished. "The stone remembers," says old Ipuwer, who supervises the final fitting of blocks. It is one of his favorite sayings, repeated so often that younger workers sometimes mimic it when he is out of earshot. Yet it contains profound truth. Every strike of the chisel, every cut of the saw, every grain of sand used to smooth its face, the stone records it all. Respectful work creates respectful stone that will stand for eternity. Careless work creates stone that will fail when tested by time. By midday, our saw has progressed significantly through the massive block. The cut follows the natural weakness I detected, making our work more efficient than had we chosen a different line. This is the wisdom that comes only through experience, knowing when to impose human design upon stone and when to collaborate with the material's inherent nature. "Now comes the moment of truth," I tell Senbi as we prepare to separate the cut sections. Wooden wedges are inserted into the groove we've created, then dampened with water. As the wood expands, it creates gentle but irresistible pressure along the cut line. There is always tension in this moment. Will the stone split cleanly along the intended path? Or will it break irregularly, potentially ruining weeks of work? I place my hand on the stone once more, feeling for any subtle vibration that might indicate developing stress in unwanted directions. The stone remains cool under my palm, accepting the increasing pressure without protest. Then comes a sound, like a deep sigh, barely audible but felt through the hands as much as heard by the ears. The massive block separates precisely along our cut, the two sections moving apart with a gentle grace that belies their enormous weight. Senbi's eyes widen at the perfect split, the interior of the stone revealed for the first time since it formed countless seasons ago. "It agreed with us," I say simply, running my fingers along the newly exposed surface. The interior shows the fine, even grain that makes this limestone so valued for the outer casing. No unexpected fossils, no discoloration, no hidden flaws that might compromise its integrity when set in place. "How do you know when the stone disagrees?" Senbi asks, genuinely curious. "It tells you, sometimes dramatically." I show him a thin scar on my forearm. This came from a stone that had different ideas than the overseer about where it should be cut. When it split, a fragment flew like an arrow. I was fortunate it struck only my arm and not my eye or throat. This is the respect that experienced stoneworkers develop. Not superstitious reverence, but practical acknowledgement of stone's properties and potential dangers. We work not against the material, but with it, recognizing both its limitations and its extraordinary capabilities when properly understood. Throughout the afternoon, we continue shaping the now split block, gradually transforming it from rough-cut mass to precisely dimensioned building element. The outer face must slope at exactly the specified angle. The sides must fit against neighboring blocks, with gaps no wider than a fingernail is thick. The top and bottom must be perfectly flat to distribute the enormous weight that will press upon it when set in place. As the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, I step back to assess our progress. The block has been transformed, no longer merely stone, but now a component of something greater, its individual nature subsumed into the collective purpose of the great house. Yet something of its original voice remains, now harmonized with human intention. "The stone is satisfied," I tell Senbi, who looks questioningly at me. "Can't you tell?" "It has found its proper form." He places his hand on the shaped block, trying to sense what I perceive. After a moment, he nods slowly. "It feels right," he says, struggling to articulate the subtle perception, like it was always meant to be this shape, and we merely helped it discover that. I smile at his insight. He has begun to hear the stone's voice, to participate in the ancient conversation between human hands and Earth's substance. This dialogue has continued since the first toolmaker struck one stone with another to create a sharp edge, since the first builder stacked river rocks to create shelter. We are merely the current participants in an exchange as old as humanity itself. As the day's work ends and tools are carefully stored away, I rest my hand once more on the block we have shaped. Tomorrow it will join countless others in the growing monument, becoming part of something that will outlast everyone who helped create it. The stone will remain when our names are forgotten, when our village has returned to desert sand, when perhaps even the purpose of the great house has faded from memory. Yet something of our conversation with the stone will endure. The respect with which we approached its nature, the care with which we revealed its potential, the partnership between material and maker that transformed mere rock into eternal statement. In this sense, the stone not only speaks but remembers, carrying the echo of our dialogue across millennia yet to come. The first light of dawn reveals an extraordinary scene that would astonish those who know nothing of our methods. A massive limestone block, weighing more than 20 oxen, begins its journey from quarry to its destined position on the great house's northern face. What appears miraculous to the uninitiated is simply the culmination of generations of accumulated knowledge, the practical application of principles discovered through trial and refinement over countless projects. Prepare. The sledge, calls Nacht, the transportation overseer, his voice carrying authority earned through 30 years of moving stone. Men immediately respond, positioning wooden runners beneath the block, checking that the smooth log rollers are properly spaced along the prepared track that leads from quarry to construction site. I watch from my position near the receiving area, where my crew will eventually take possession of the block for final shaping before placement. Though my specialty is stone cutting rather than transportation, all of us understand the basics of each aspect of construction. The knowledge is shared, creating redundancy that allows the work to continue even when key individuals are unavailable. The true genius of Egyptian engineering lies not in magical powers or supernatural assistance, as some foreigners believe, but in our profound understanding of physical principles and our ability to organize thousands of workers into coordinated effort. The tools themselves are remarkably simple: wooden sledges, rope made from palm fiber, levers cut from acacia trees, ramps built of mud brick and rubble. Yet when employed with proper technique and sufficient manpower, they allow us to accomplish what seems impossible. Ropes are attached to the prepared sledge, each one carefully checked for strength and properly secured. The hauling teams take position, nearly 200 men arranged in rows, each group responsible for a specific rope. Alongside them stand the water pourers, whose job is to dampen the track before the sledge, reducing friction and making the massive load more manageable. "In harmony!" shouts Nacht, raising his hand. A drummer begins a steady rhythm, providing the beat that will synchronize the efforts of the hauling teams. The water pourers move first, sprinkling their precious liquid from pottery jars onto the wooden track. Then, responsive to the drum's command, 200 men bend their backs and begin to pull. The massive stone doesn't move at first, seeming to defy their effort. Then, almost imperceptibly, it begins to shift. A fraction of a finger's width at first, then a full finger, then a hand's breadth as the combined force of 200 synchronized bodies overcomes inertia. A chant rises spontaneously from the haulers, a working song whose rhythm matches their pulling. Heave together, brothers of stone. Pull as one, the great house rises. Heave together, the gods are watching. Pull as one, for Pharaoh's glory. The block begins its slow journey, moving steadily along the prepared track. Men with long wooden poles walk alongside, ready to adjust the rollers beneath the sledge as it progresses. Others carry replacement rollers, moving quickly to the back of the sledge to collect those that emerge from behind and racing forward to place them in the path ahead, creating a continuous surface of rolling logs beneath the wooden runners. This coordinated dance continues hour after hour, the massive stone advancing steadily toward the construction site. When one team of haulers tires, a fresh group replaces them without interrupting the stone's progress. Water carriers move constantly between the Nile and the worksite, ensuring the track remains properly lubricated and the workers hydrated. As the sledge reaches the base of the great house, it encounters the main ramp, an enormous inclined plane of packed earth and mud brick that spirals around the growing structure. This ramp, itself a massive engineering project, is regularly extended and modified as the monument rises. Its gradient is carefully calculated to balance the effort required by haulers against the danger of too steep an incline. Prepare for the ascent, calls Nacht. Additional hauling teams join those already in place, doubling the manpower available. For the more challenging uphill portion of the journey, the rhythm changes, becoming slower but more forceful as the block begins to climb. Near the current work level, the block must be transferred from sledge to its final position. This delicate operation involves temporary wooden scaffolding, levers, for final adjustments, and the skilled eyes of master builders who ensure perfect alignment. Ropes are rearranged, now used to control the block's descent into position rather than to pull it forward. Ease it down, carefully now, directs Ipuer, the master setter. Men with copper levers make minute adjustments, ensuring the block descends perfectly into its prepared bed. Others stand ready with measuring rods, checking constantly that the block maintains proper alignment with its neighbors and the overall design. The precision achieved with such simple tools continues to amaze, even those of us who work with them daily. Blocks weighing many tons are positioned with gaps between them no wider than a blade of grass, their surfaces aligned to create the perfectly angled faces of the great house. This is not the work of giants or gods, but of ordinary men, applying extraordinary knowledge passed down through generations of builders. How did we discover these methods? Senbi once asked me as we watched a particularly massive granite block being moved into position for the king's chamber deep within the structure. Through necessity and observation, I replied. Each project teaches lessons that improve the next. Our grandfathers learned from their grandfathers, who learned from theirs, each generation adding small improvements to techniques that stretch back to the first builders. This accumulation of practical knowledge represents our true strength. The lever, the inclined plane, the roller, the pulley. Simple machines that, when combined with coordinated human effort, multiply our natural capabilities beyond what seems possible. We have no magic beyond the magic of understanding how the physical world behaves, and how to work with these principles rather than against them. The ramps that enable construction are themselves engineering marvels, designed to be extended as the monument rises while also being removable once their purpose is fulfilled. Some spiral around the exterior of the growing structure. Others run through interior spaces that will later be filled with masonry. Their design balances multiple considerations: stability under heavy loads, appropriate incline for hauling, teams, and eventual removal that leaves no trace in the completed monument. Equally ingenious are the lifting devices used for raising blocks to heights where ramps become impractical. Wooden frames with counterweights, systems of pulleys that multiply human strength, and carefully balanced levers allow relatively small teams to move weights that would otherwise require hundreds of workers. These devices, too, represent knowledge, accumulated through generations of experience. By late afternoon, the block that began its journey at dawn finally comes to rest in its permanent position on the northern face. Ipur checks its placement one final time, using specialized tools to verify its alignment with adjacent stones and its contribution to the overall slope of the face. Satisfied, he makes a small mark on the stone and on his papyrus record, documenting this latest addition to the growing monument. Another day, another cubit closer to the stars, he says, the familiar phrase both acknowledgement of progress and reminder of purpose. As I prepare to return to my own workstation, I pause to observe the overall construction site. Thousands of men move in what appears to be chaos, but is actually highly organized activity. haulers pulling new blocks along prepared tracks, water carriers moving between the canal and work areas, stone cutters shaping rough blocks into precise building elements, setters ensuring perfect placement, supervisors coordinating the intricate dance that transforms individual effort into collective achievement. This, perhaps, is the greatest engineering feat of all. Not just the movement of stone, but the organization of human effort on a scale rarely achieved. The great house rises not through supernatural means, but through the synchronized application of simple principles, the coordinated exertion of thousands of bodies directed by generations of accumulated wisdom. As the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, casting long shadows from the growing monument, I reflect on how our seemingly simple tools, rope, wood, water, human muscle, combine to create something that will endure for eternity. There is profound elegance in this simplicity, in solutions that require no complex mechanisms but merely the intelligent application of basic principles. The true wonder lies not in imagined magical assistance, but in human ingenuity, our ability to observe, learn, refine, and transmit knowledge across generations. Each stone that rises toward the heavens represents not just physical material, but the accumulated wisdom of countless minds working together across time toward a single magnificent purpose. Midday arrives with merciless intensity, the sun at its zenith pouring liquid fire upon stone and flesh alike. This is the most challenging hour, when even the stones themselves seem to breathe heavily in the oppressive heat. Work doesn't stop. The great house demands constant progress, but it changes rhythm, acknowledging the reality of human endurance against Ri's most potent manifestation. I pause in my work, straightening my back that has been bent over the limestone block since early morning. Sweat streams freely down my chest and back, soaking the simple linen kilt that is my only clothing. The water carrier approaches, and I accept a dipper of precious liquid with murmured thanks to both the man and the life-giving substance he provides. Seek shadow when possible during these hours, advises Imhotep, our crew leader, moving among the stone workers. Alternate heavy tasks with lighter ones. The great house rises through steady effort, not through men falling to sun sickness. This wisdom has been earned through generations of working through Egypt's punishing summers. The overseers understand that pushing men beyond endurance during the day's hottest hours ultimately slows progress rather than advancing it. Better to work at measured pace than to lose workers to collapse or heat stroke. The massive structure itself creates regions of blessed shadow that rotate throughout the day as the sun travels across the sky. During midday, the northern face offers some relief, and work schedules are arranged to take advantage of these natural cooling areas when possible. Temporary shelters of reed mats supported on wooden frames provide additional shade for those working in directly exposed areas. I move my stone-cutting operation into one such shadow, repositioning tools and materials with practiced efficiency. The temperature difference between direct sunlight and shade can mean the difference between bearable labor and dangerous overheating. Even the stone responds differently. Limestone heated by hours of direct sun becomes more brittle, more prone to unwanted fracturing when struck. Another reason to seek shadow when performing delicate cutting work. The stone breathes with the heat my father taught me. It expands under Ri's gaze, contracts in Nut's cool embrace. Remember this when making precise cuts, for the measurement taken in morning coolness will differ from that same stone at midday heat. This understanding of how materials respond to temperature influences many aspects of our work. Blocks are measured and cut with subtle allowances for expansion, ensuring that joints remain tight through daily and seasonal temperature cycles. The measuring rods themselves, typically made of wood, are calibrated to account for their own slight expansion in heat. Around me, other workers similarly adapt to the midday conditions. The hauling teams, whose physically demanding labor generates substantial body heat, rotate more frequently between active pulling and rest periods. Water carriers increase their rounds, ensuring no one goes too long without replenishing the moisture their bodies rapidly lose through sweat. In the heat, listen more carefully to your body's warnings, Imhotep continues, addressing particularly the younger workers who sometimes push themselves too hard out of eagerness to prove their worth. Dizziness, confusion, cessation of sweating. These are messages from the gods that you must seek shade and water immediately. I observe Senbi, relatively new to stonework, showing several of these warning signs. His face flushed unusually red, his movements becoming slightly uncoordinated, without drawing attention that might embarrass him. I call him over to my work area in the shade. Hold this point steady while I make the measurement, I instruct, giving him a task that requires little exertion while allowing his body to cool. I discreetly ensure he drinks from my own water jar, watching as his color gradually returns to normal. The heat caught me by surprise, he admits quietly, recognizing what I've done. It feels different here than when I worked in the fields. Stone reflects and holds the sun's fire differently than living plants, I explain. And here we have no green leaves above to filter Ree's gaze. You must develop new awareness of how your body responds in this environment. This transfer of practical knowledge, not just how to cut stone, but how to survive cutting stone, is as important as any technical skill I might teach him. Many young workers have the strength and enthusiasm needed for this work, but without proper understanding of how to manage their body's limitations, they risk serious injury or even death from the elements. Midday also brings subtle changes to the stone itself. Having absorbed the morning sun, the massive blocks now radiate heat like bread ovens, creating a microclimate around the great house different from anywhere else. This heat changes how the stone responds to our tools. Copper. Chisels must be cooled more frequently in water to prevent them from losing their edge too quickly. Abrasives dry faster, requiring more constant replenishment. Fresh-cut surfaces cure differently than those cut in cooler hours. Feel how the stone holds the day's memory, I instruct Senbi, placing his hand against a block that has been in direct sunlight since dawn. Even when shadow finally covers it, this heat will remain for hours. The stone remembers the sun long after we have forgotten it. This understanding extends beyond practical concerns to deeper appreciation of the materials we work with. Stone is not dead matter, but something with its own properties, reactions, and behaviors. It responds to heat and cold, to moisture and dryness, to pressure and release. Learning these responses is essential to working with it rather than against it. As the hottest hours gradually yield to afternoon, work rhythms shift again. Tasks too delicate or dangerous to perform in peak heat, final fitting of massive blocks, application of precision measurements, lifting operations requiring maximum coordination resume with renewed intensity. The great house demands constant progress, but that progress comes through intelligent adaptation to conditions rather than foolish resistance to them. I return to more active work as my body, refreshed by the brief respite in shade and extra hydration, signals its readiness. The stone I'm shaping will form part of the outer casing, its surface requiring the perfect angle and smoothness that will eventually contribute to the great house's gleaming white exterior. This precision work demands full concentration, made easier now that the most punishing heat has begun its slow retreat. Across the vast construction site, thousands of others similarly adjust their efforts to the day's natural rhythm, pushing forward when conditions allow, moderating exertion when necessary, maintaining the steady progress that has raised this massive structure course by course, block by block. This is not the frenzied labor of slaves driven beyond endurance, as some foreign tales might later claim, but the measured work of skilled craftsmen who understand both their materials and their own bodies' capabilities. As shadow gradually extends from the eastern side of the great house, claiming more of the work area in its cooling embrace, I feel the subtle transition in the day's character. The oppressive weight of midday heat lifts incrementally, allowing deeper breathing, freer movement, renewed energy. The stone, too, seems to release its tension, becoming more responsive to tools, more cooperative with human intention. I place my hand once more against the block I've been shaping, feeling how it still radiates the day's accumulated warmth, even as the air around it begins to cool. This thermal memory reminds me of the stone's fundamental nature, its stability, its patience, its connection to time scales far beyond human experience. We shape it for our momentary purposes, but it existed for countless seasons before us, and will endure for countless more after we return to dust. In this relationship between ephemeral human effort and enduring stone lies the essence of our work on the Great House. We pour our brief energies into creating something that transcends our limited lifespans. The heat we endure, the sweat we shed, the aches our bodies suffer, all become worthwhile when measured against the eternity we help construct, one carefully placed block at a time. As afternoon advances, and more of the work area falls into shadow, the pace of activity increases noticeably. Crews move with renewed vigor, making the most of the day's remaining light. The Great House seems to grow more rapidly during these hours, as if it too appreciates the respite from Rhee's most intense gaze. The architect walks among us this morning, a rare appearance that sends ripples of attention across the work site. Hemiunu, Pharaoh's cousin, overseer of all the king's works, and chief architect of the Great House, moves with the particular confidence of one who sees not just what is, but what will be. While we focus on individual stones, he perceives the completed monument they will eventually form. His presence commands immediate respect. Work doesn't pause. The schedule allows no such interruption. But every craftsman, hauler, and supervisor straightens almost imperceptibly, hands moving with extra precision, eyes more intensely focused on their tasks. Though he speaks directly to only a few, all feel the weight of his evaluation. I continue shaping my assigned block, but I admit to a heightened awareness of every strike of my copper chisel, every measurement I take. Hemiunu's rare inspections often result in adjustments to procedures, reassignment of personnel, or occasionally the identification of workers whose skills merit advancement. Few opportunities for social mobility exist in our ordered society, but exceptional craft skill remains one path to improved station. The northern alignment requires verification, he informs Ipur, the master setter responsible for ensuring the Great House's precision orientation to the celestial pole. Last night's observations suggested a deviation of less than half a finger's width at the current height, but this must be corrected before proceeding further. Such precision might seem excessive to outsiders, but we understand its necessity. The Great House serves not merely as Pharaoh's eternal dwelling, but as an instrument of astronomical alignment, its passages and chambers designed to connect with specific stars at specific times. Even minute deviation at current levels would multiply as the structure rises, potentially compromising its sacred function. Hemiunu's knowledge exceeds ordinary human understanding. Though he appears as a man, albeit one of considerable presence, with the shaved head and fine linen garments that mark his elite status, his comprehension of numbers, proportions, and celestial mechanics approaches the divine. It is said that he can calculate in his mind measurements that would require seasons of work for ordinary scribes, that he can visualize the entire massive structure down to the placement of individual stones. His mathematical genius manifests in the very proportions of the Great House itself. The relationship between height and base, the precise angle of the faces, the alignment of internal passages, all embody numerical relationships that reflect cosmic patterns. Some of these calculations involve numbers so complex they can only be expressed through geometric relationships rather than direct counting. I pause in my work to observe as Hemiunu examines the current summit of construction, where the 100-cubit mark was reached yesterday. He carries a specialized measuring device, a wooden instrument with marked plumb lines that allow precise assessment of vertical and horizontal alignments. Several high-ranking scribes accompany him, recording his observations and calculations on papyrus scrolls with swift, precise hieroglyphs. The core structure maintains perfect proportion, he comments to the overseer of the upper courses. The ratio of rise to horizontal displacement remains exactly as specified in the plans. This ratio, which creates the great house's distinctive, angled sides, represents one of Hemiunu's most brilliant calculations. It is not merely aesthetically pleasing, but mathematically significant, incorporating the divine number that scribes represent as part of a fraction. This number appears throughout nature, in the spiral of certain shells, in the relationship between parts of the human body, in the growth patterns of plants, and now, through Hemiunu's genius, in the very shape of the great house itself. The architect moves methodically through the worksite, his attention falling briefly on my stone-cutting operation. I continue working, demonstrating the careful technique passed down through generations of craftsmen. He observes for several moments, his expression revealing nothing, then makes a brief notation on a wax tablet before moving onward. Whether this represents approval, criticism, or merely documentation, I cannot tell. He noticed your technique with the copper saw, whispers Senbi, once Hemiunu has moved to another area. That must be significant? Perhaps, I respond, neither encouraging hope nor discouraging it. The chief architect sees many things. Our task is simply to continue doing our best work. Yet I cannot deny a certain pride that the most knowledgeable man in the two lands briefly focused his attention on my humble craft. Though I understand but a fraction of the mathematical principles that guide the great house's design, my hands contribute to their physical manifestation, translating abstract calculation into tangible reality. This relationship between abstract number and physical form represents perhaps the most profound aspect of the great house's construction. The monument rises not merely through physical effort, but through the application of mathematical knowledge so advanced that some suspect it was gifted directly from the gods. Hemiunu's brilliance lies in his ability to translate that knowledge into practical instructions that ordinary craftsmen can follow. The precision achieved staggers the imagination. The great house's base forms an almost perfect square, with sides differing by less than the width of a finger, despite measuring over 400 cubits in length. The corners align to the cardinal directions with variations smaller than can be measured with ordinary tools. The slope angle of each face maintains consistency within tiny fractions of a degree from bottom to top. Such precision requires not just exceptional design, but continuous verification throughout construction. Specialized tools check alignments after each course is laid. Plumb lines weighted with copper determine vertical accuracy. Water-filled troughs establish horizontal level. Sighting instruments confirm angles and alignments with both terrestrial and celestial reference points. Mathematics governs everything. I once overheard Hemiunu explaining to visiting nobles who questioned the resources devoted to such precise measurement. The great house does not merely symbolize divine order, it embodies it through numerical relationships. Its proportions are not arbitrary, but reflect the same mathematical patterns that govern the movement of stars, the flood cycles of the Nile, the growth of living things. Through precise adherence to these divine numbers, the structure achieves harmony with cosmic order. This connection between mathematics and divine order permeates all aspects of the great house's design. The relationship between interior chambers, the dimensions of passages, even the number of courses in certain sections, all incorporate numerical values with religious significance. The structure functions as a three-dimensional mathematical equation, a physical expression of abstract principles that connect earth to heaven. As afternoon approaches, Hemiunu concludes his inspection with a final review of astronomical alignments. The great house includes passages oriented to specific stars, particularly those in the northern sky that never set below the horizon, the imperishable ones that symbolize eternal life. These alignments must be maintained with extraordinary precision as the structure rises, requiring constant recalculation and adjustment. Before departing, The chief architect conducts a brief meeting with overseers and master craftsmen, reviewing progress and issuing refined instructions for coming work. Though I am not among those directly addressed, I position myself within hearing distance, eager for any insight into the greater vision that guides our daily labor. The core masonry remains 3 courses ahead of the casing stones, Hemiunu notes, referencing the rough inner blocks that provide the great house's mass and the finely finished outer stones that will eventually create its smooth, brilliant facade. Maintain this sequence to allow proper settling before final fitting of the exterior. His instructions reveal the extraordinary foresight incorporated into construction planning. The great house rises through carefully orchestrated sequences. Rough, core blocks providing structural support, precisely cut backing stones creating the proper slope angle, and finally, the meticulously finished casing stones that will present a perfect surface to eternity. Each phase must progress in proper relationship to the others, maintaining both structural integrity and visual perfection. As Hemiunu departs, escorted by scribes still recording his final observations, the worksite gradually returns to normal rhythm. Yet his presence leaves a lasting impression. A reminder that our individual efforts contribute to a design of almost incomprehensible sophistication. A project that connects human labor to divine mathematics through the genius of architectural vision. I return to my stone cutting with renewed purpose, understanding more clearly how my specific task fits within the grand mathematical concept. The block before me requires shaping to precise dimensions that will maintain the great house's perfect slope angle when set in place. Though I may not comprehend all the calculations that determine these dimensions, my hands can faithfully execute them, transforming abstract number into physical reality. In this collaboration between architectural vision and craft execution lies the true wonder of the great house. Hemiunu's mathematical brilliance would remain mere theory without thousands of skilled hands to manifest it in stone. Our craft knowledge would produce mere structure without his divine understanding of proportion and alignment. The stone grows lighter when carried by stories. This wisdom passes between workers through generations, acknowledged by experienced craftsmen and gradually discovered by newcomers. While we shape stone with our hands, we shape ourselves through words exchanged, tales that connect us to those who built before us, jokes that ease physical burden, snippets of wisdom that pass specialized knowledge between experienced workers and apprentices. Tell us again about the Great Flood, requests young Kay during our midday rest, addressing old Kemwaset, whose grandfather helped build the step pyramid of Djoser nearly 100 years ago. Though most of us have heard this tale many times, we settle comfortably in the shadow of massive limestone blocks, ready to be transported by narrative while our bodies rest. It was during the 9th year of construction, Kemwaset begins, his voice taking on the particular cadence of practiced storytelling. The inundation came higher than any living person had witnessed, the Nile rising until it lapped at the very edge of our construction site, threatening to undermine the foundation stones already set in place. Though I've heard this story a dozen times, I find myself leaning forward slightly, drawn into the drama of a moment that occurred before my birth, yet connects directly to the monument rising around us. The sharing of such narratives creates continuity between generations of builders, linking those who laid the foundation to those who will place the capstone. The water kept rising, Kemwaset continues, his gnarled hands gesturing to indicate the flood's advance. The overseers prepared to abandon the site, fearing all would be lost. But then the chief architect, not Hemiunu but his predecessor, ordered thousands of limestone blocks arranged in a great wall around the perimeter, creating a barrier against the water. Did it hold? Asks Kay, though he knows the answer. The ritual of storytelling requires certain expected responses, participation that acknowledges the teller's authority and the listener's engagement. For 3 days the workers reinforced that wall, carrying stones through water that reached their waists. On the 4th day, the flood crested just as the final section was completed. Had the water risen another finger's width, all would have been lost. But it held. When the flood finally receded, the foundation remained intact, and work resumed with renewed determination. The story contains practical knowledge disguised as entertainment, information about flood management, emergency response, and the site's vulnerability to water damage. Yet it serves broader purposes as well, creating shared identity through collective narrative, connecting current workers to those who faced challenges in the past, reinforcing the sense that we participate in something greater than individual effort. I heard a different version, interjects Senbi with a mischievous smile. In that telling, the architect ordered everyone to urinate around the perimeter, creating a yellow barrier that the Nile refused to cross out of respect. Laughter erupts, the cruder humor providing necessary counterbalance to the more formal narrative. This too serves a central function, releasing tension through shared mirth, briefly suspending the hierarchy that normally governs our interactions, creating bonds through collective amusement. As the laughter subsides, another type of tale emerges, the specialized knowledge passed between craftsmen through seemingly casual conversation, but containing invaluable practical wisdom. When I first began setting the backing stones, offers Ipur, addressing several younger workers, I made the mistake of trusting only the measuring rod. My overseer, may his ka rest peacefully in the western lands, taught me to also verify with my eye by sighting along the surface. The rod can lie, he told me, but the eye knows true alignment when it sees it. This nugget of craft wisdom prompts others to share similar insights, creating an unstructured but highly effective transfer of specialized knowledge. I contribute my own experience with particularly challenging stone. The limestone from the southern quarry requires different handling than that from across the river, I explain, noticing how Senbi and other newer workers listen attentively. It splits more readily along hidden seams, which can be either advantage or disaster, depending on whether you've properly read the stone's intentions before cutting. These exchanges constitute a crucial educational system operating alongside more formal training. Through stories of past projects, accounts of mistakes and their corrections, descriptions of unusual challenges and their solutions, we maintain and expand the collective knowledge base that makes our extraordinary achievements possible. The stories flow back and forth as we rest in the shadow of massive stones. Tales of particularly challenging blocks successfully placed, of near disasters, narrowly averted, of ingenious solutions to unexpected problems. Some are clearly embellished for dramatic effect, others stripped to essential technical detail, but each contributes to our shared understanding of what we do and why it matters. My grandfather helped build the North Pyramid at Dashur, shares a normally quiet worker named Nefermat. He told me that during construction, they discovered the ground beneath the northeastern corner was less stable than expected. Rather than abandon the site or risk structural failure, they adjusted the angle of the entire monument, creating what some now call the bent pyramid. This account prompts discussion of how previous building challenges influenced current techniques, how each monument represents not only achievement in itself, but also learning that improves subsequent projects. The great house we now construct incorporates lessons from every major structure built before it, from modest mastabas to the step pyramid to Sneferu's red pyramid. As rest time nears its end, the tone of stories shifts toward the motivational narratives that prepare us mentally for returning to physically demanding labor. Imhotep, our crew leader, stands and stretches before sharing a particularly effective tale. During the reign of Sneferu, when the Red Pyramid was under construction, a common stoneworker became known for extraordinary skill with copper chisels, he begins. His work caught the attention of the chief architect, who recommended him to Pharaoh himself. That man, born to a family of ordinary farmers, eventually rose to become overseer of fine stone cutting for the entire project, with his own house and servants provided by royal decree. The story's message requires no explicit statement. Exceptional, Skill receives recognition regardless of origin, encouraging each worker to perform at his best despite fatigue or challenging conditions. Whether the tale is strictly accurate matters less than its function in motivating renewed effort. As we return to our workstations, the stories continue in briefer form. Comments called between workers, jokes shared among smaller groups, questions and answers exchanged between experienced craftsmen and those still mastering their skills. This continuous verbal exchange accompanies the physical work, creating a rich oral tradition that exists alongside the more formal knowledge recorded in architectural plans and administrative documents. Through the afternoon, I work alongside Senbi and several other younger stoneworkers, simultaneously demonstrating cutting techniques and sharing narratives that explain the reasoning behind specific methods. This combination of showing and telling constitutes the most effective transmission of craft knowledge, abstract principles made concrete through both observed practice and explanatory narrative. Always listen for the change in sound when the copper saw nears a hidden flaw in the stone, I advise, guiding Senbi's hands as he works. My father taught me this after he witnessed a massive block split unpredictably, killing 2 workers. Their overseer had ignored the warning sound because he was rushing to complete his assigned section before the evening inspection. The story embeds safety information within dramatic narrative, making it more memorable than simple instruction would be. Senbi nods seriously, his hands adjusting pressure on the saw in response to both my guidance and the cautionary tale. As the day progresses toward evening, conversations turn increasingly toward matters beyond work. Family news, village events, speculation about the Nile's coming inundation, reports from traders about conditions in distant parts of the 2 lands. These exchanges maintain our connection to the wider world beyond the construction site, preventing the total absorption in work that might make us forget our humanity. When the signal finally sounds ending the day's labor, tools are carefully stored, work areas prepared for morning continuation, and the thousands of workers begin their migration back to villages and encampments. Even during this transition, stories continue their essential work, processing the day's experiences through shared narrative, transforming individual labor into collective achievement, connecting each person's effort to both past and future. Walking back toward the workers' village as the sun approaches the western horizon, I find myself between Kemwaset and Senbi, oldest and youngest members of our crew, listening as they exchange perspectives separated by more than 50 years, yet connected through shared purpose. Their conversation, like the countless others occurring among returning workers, weaves individual experience into collective narrative, transforming mere construction into cultural continuity. Between the stones we place during daylight hours and the stories we exchange during rest and return, we build 2 monuments simultaneously, one of limestone and granite that will stand for countless generations, and another of shared narrative that lives in memory and voice, passing from mind to mind as long as the great house prompts questions about who built it and how they achieved what seems impossible. The Nile welcomes us with cool embrace as the day's final light paints western cliffs in shades of gold and amber. After leaving tools properly stored and receiving tomorrow's work assignments, thousands of laborers make their way from the great house toward the river's edge. This daily migration, from construction site to water's blessing, forms another essential rhythm in the life of those who build for eternity. We wade into the sacred flow, feeling the day's accumulated dust and sweat begin to dissolve. The sensation brings immediate relief, not just physical cleansing, but spiritual renewal. We who work with stone develop intimate relationship with dust, that omnipresent substance that coats skin, fills nostrils, and settles into every fold of clothing. The river washes it away, returning us to cleanliness that, while temporary, feels like transformation. The Nile knows the taste of every stone we cut, my father often said. It receives the dust of our labor every evening, carrying it eventually to the great sea, spreading the essence of our work throughout the world. Around me, Hundreds of other workers perform similar ablutions, some simply rinsing dust from faces and hands, others submerging completely in deeper sections, a few swimming, with the particular joy that comes from surrendering body weight to gentle current after a day of resisting stone's immovable mass. Children from nearby villages often join this ritual, diving and splashing among the laborers, their laughter providing counterpoint to the deeper conversations of weary men. The river holds different meaning for us than for farmers or fishermen. They depend on its practical bounty, the black soil it deposits, the fish that teem within its depths. We stone workers who spend our days in dust and heat commune with its spiritual essence, the blessing of Hapi, god of the inundation, whose cool touch renews both body and K. "Show me your back," requests Senbi, noticing my attempts to reach an area between my shoulder blades, where stone dust has mixed with sweat to form a paste-like grime. He uses a handful of river silt as gentle abrasive, scrubbing away the day's residue with practiced circular motions. I will return the favor, as will hundreds of pairs of workers up and down the shore. This mutual cleansing representing another bond formed through shared labor. The Nile's gift extends beyond mere cleansing. The cool water soothes muscles strained from hours of physical effort, eases joints that have held the same positions too long, reduces inflammation in hands that grip tools from dawn until evening. The physicians who attend the worksite recommend specific soaking rituals for different types of strain, longer immersion for backs that have bent over stone all day, gentle stretching exercises in water's supportive embrace for shoulders that have wielded hammers, careful massaging of forearms that have guided chisels with precise pressure. The river rebuilds what the stone wears away, explains Ipuver, the elder setter who has survived 3 decades of construction through careful attention to his body's needs. He demonstrates a particular movement, arms stretched wide, then brought slowly together against water's resistance, repeated until tight muscles gradually release their accumulated tension. We have developed specialized knowledge about the river's varying properties along different sections of shoreline. Certain areas, where the current runs neither too swift nor too sluggish, prove ideal for soaking aching feet. Other sections, where fine silt creates natural softness underfoot, offer perfect conditions for standing immersion. The deepest pools, accessible only to confident swimmers, provide complete weightlessness that realigns spines compressed by hours of heavy lifting. Mind the deeper channel beyond that sandbar, I warn Kay, a younger worker from the hauling teams whose shoulders show the characteristic redness of rope burn mixed with sunburn. The current strengthens unexpectedly there. This knowledge, like our understanding of stone, passes from experienced workers to newcomers, ensuring safety while maximizing healing benefits. The river, like the limestone we shape, responds differently to different approaches. Dangerous when misunderstood, tremendously beneficial when properly respected. As the sun approaches the horizon, changing the light from gold to deepening red, our cleansing ritual incorporates more spiritual dimensions. Many workers perform abbreviated versions of the purification rites practiced by priests. Symbolic washing of mouth that speaks, eyes that see, ears that hear, hands that create. These gestures acknowledge the divine nature of our work, the sacred purpose behind our daily labor. The river receives not just our physical dust but our daily concerns, observes Kemwasit, the eldest among us, his rituals more elaborate than most. Each evening we release our worries to Hapi's current, beginning each day unburdened. I watch as he carefully pours small libations from a pottery cup, offering thanks to the river god for the day's safe completion and requesting protection for tomorrow's work. Though not all workers perform such formal observances, most acknowledge through word or gesture the spiritual transaction that occurs in this evening immersion, the exchange of accumulated fatigue for renewed vitality. The social dimension of river bathing proves equally important. Conversations flow more freely here than at the worksite, hierarchy temporarily dissolved by water's equalizing presence. Overseers and ordinary laborers master craftsmen and apprentices, older workers and younger ones, all engage in more open discussion than permitted by daytime work structure. Problems are solved, conflicts resolved, innovations suggested in this liminal space between day's labor and evening's rest. I struggled with the angled cut on the backing stone until Nebamoon showed me his technique with the copper saw. I overhear Senbi telling others, the praise warming me despite my pretense of not noticing. Such acknowledgments, freely given during river time, strengthen the bonds between generations of workers, creating mentoring relationships that formal work assignments might not facilitate. As twilight deepens, we gradually leave the river's embrace, our clean bodies cooling quickly in the evening air. The walk back to the workers' village takes on different character than the outward journey. No longer dust-covered and exhausted, we move with renewed energy, conversations animated by the river's rejuvenating touch. Some workers sing traditional songs, their voices harmonizing with practiced ease. Others discuss plans for evening meals or anticipate the simple pleasures of family time before sleep claims them. I linger slightly longer than most, performing my personal ritual of gratitude. Submerging once more until only my face remains. Above water, I whisper thanks to Happy for another day safely completed, another step toward the great house's completion. The cool current seems to respond, swirling around my tired limbs with particular gentleness, as if acknowledging my appreciation. Rising from the river, water streaming from my cleansed body, I feel the transformation complete, no longer merely a tired worker but a renewed participant in the great project that defines our generation. Tomorrow's labor awaits, with all its challenges and satisfactions. But for now, in this moment between river and home, I exist in perfect balance. Physically cleansed, spiritually aligned, socially connected to the community that gives meaning to individual effort. The river's blessing extends beyond the immediate physical relief. In my dreams tonight, as on many nights, I will hear the gentle sound of flowing water beneath all other dream images, the Nile's perpetual movement providing soundtrack to rest itself. Many workers report similar experiences, as if the river continues its healing work even in sleep, connecting our unconscious minds to its eternal rhythm. As I walk the final distance to my dwelling, body cooling but spirit warmed by the evening's ritual, I carry the river's blessing within me. Not just cleanliness, but renewed connection to the fundamental forces that make our work possible. Stone and water, the solid and the flowing, the permanent and the ever-changing. These opposites define our existence as builders, and the evening immersion reminds us that both elements deserve equal reverence in the creation of monuments meant for eternity. Night unfolds above us like a vast papyrus scroll inscribed with divine writing. As darkness deepens, the heavens reveal their treasures, thousands of stars emerging from the indigo vault, their patterns unchanged since the first humans raised eyes skyward. For most in the two lands, these celestial lights inspire awe and religious devotion. For those of us who build the great house, they serve additional purpose. Practical guides that ensure our earthly construction maintains perfect alignment with cosmic order. I sit outside my dwelling, the evening meal complete, family duties attended to. This quiet time, when the village settles into night's embrace but before sleep claims us, provides opportunity for contemplation beneath the star-filled sky. Many workers simply seek rest after the day's exertions, but others, particularly those involved in precision aspects of construction, join me in studying the celestial patterns that govern our work. The imperishable ones have shifted since last season, observes Kui, who assists the astronomers in measuring stellar positions. He points toward the northern sky, where certain stars circle perpetually without ever disappearing below the horizon. The alignment markers must be recalculated for tomorrow's positioning of the cornerstones. Unlike stars that rise and set, the imperishable ones remain constantly visible, rotating around a fixed point in the northern sky. This celestial pivot, What some call the star that does not move, provides the critical reference for the great house's orientation. Its four faces must align precisely with the cardinal directions, an accuracy achieved through careful stellar observation. The astronomers conducted sighting measurements throughout last night, Kui continues. They've determined that the northwest corner of the current course requires adjustment of 1 finger's width to maintain perfect alignment. Such minute corrections might seem excessive to outsiders, but we understand their necessity. The great house rises toward heaven not merely as physical structure, but as cosmological instrument, its geometrical perfection reflecting celestial mathematics. Any deviation, however slight, would compromise its sacred function as bridge between earthly and divine realms. The practical methods used for these stellar alignments demonstrate remarkable ingenuity. Along the northern base of the great house, specialized priests manage observation pits, carefully positioned excavations from which they can sight the pole star through narrow tubes. By aligning these tubes with the structure's central axis, they verify that the monument maintains perfect orientation despite its growing height. Tonight, they will conduct chord stretching using the new calculations, Kui explains, referring to the technique where taut lines establish straight edges and right angles based on stellar positioning. By morning, markers will be in place for the stone setters to follow. This integration of celestial observation and terrestrial construction represents one of our civilization's greatest achievements. The stars provide immutable reference points, unchanging even as earthly landmarks shift. By anchoring our monuments to these celestial coordinates, we create structures that embody cosmic stability, physical manifestations of Mut, the divine, order that governs both heaven and earth. Nearby, several younger workers listen to our conversation with evident interest, though they participate primarily in physical aspects of construction, hauling stones, mixing mortar, assisting skilled craftsmen. They too sense the connection between our labor and the stars above. I notice Senbi particularly attentive and motion him to join us. The passage that angles upward through the great house's center, I explain, pointing toward the massive structure still visible as a darker shape against the night sky, is positioned to align perfectly with specific stars. When Pharaoh's Ka ascends after his earthly life ends, it will travel along a path mirroring that of these divine lights. So we build more than a tomb, Senbi responds thoughtfully. We create a pathway to the heavens themselves. Exactly. The great house serves as intersection between earth and sky, between mortal and divine realms. Its passages and chambers form a three-dimensional star map, allowing Pharaoh's spirit to navigate the celestial territory as precisely as boats follow the Nile's course. This understanding transforms how workers perceive their labor. We shape stone not merely for physical construction but for cosmological purpose, each precisely placed block contributing to a machine designed for spiritual transformation. The sweat of our bodies, the skill of our hands, the accuracy of our measurements, all serve to create this bridge between worlds. As night deepens, more stars emerge, including constellations with particular significance for our work. The group of stars our astronomers call Mesketyu, resembling a bull's foreleg, rotates around the pole in endless circle, never disappearing below the horizon. Its position at specific times correlates with construction phases, certain configurations marking auspicious moments for significant operations like cornerstone placement or capstone preparation. Other constellations guide different aspects of the great house's creation. Sa, the constellation foreigners call Orion, embodies Osiris himself, the god with whom Pharaoh will merge in afterlife. Its appearance before dawn during specific seasons signals favorable periods for certain construction activities. Sopdet, the exceptionally bright star that heralds the inundation, provides crucial timing for yearly work scheduling, its first pre-dawn appearance coinciding with Nile's life-giving flood. How do the astronomers maintain such precise records? Asks another young worker who has joined our informal gathering. The stars move so slowly one can hardly detect their change from night to night. Through instruments of remarkable precision, explains Kui, clearly pleased at the opportunity to share specialized knowledge. The Merkit allows measurement of stellar positions using plumb lines suspended against the night sky. The Bay determines accurate time through shadow observations, and most importantly, through generations of recorded observations, documented on papyri and stone tablets preserved in temple archives. This accumulated astronomical knowledge represents another form of construction, not of physical monuments, but of intellectual understanding passed through generations of observer priests. Their star charts, timing tables, and calculational methods form an invisible architecture as impressive as any stone structure, allowing each generation to build upon previous discoveries, rather than beginning anew. The conversation continues. As night progresses, stars wheeling slowly overhead in their eternal patterns. More workers join our circle, some contributing questions or observations, others simply listening appreciatively to knowledge that gives deeper meaning to their daily labor. Unlike formal instruction, these nighttime discussions flow naturally, information passing between participants according to interest rather than rank or position. The measurement between the current summit and the projected apex, notes Kui, gesturing toward the shadowy mass of the great house, equals exactly 1,000 times the royal cubit rod used by the architects. This proportion was determined by the relationship between specific star positions visible only during certain seasons. Such mathematical relationships, connecting human measurement systems to cosmic patterns, characterize every aspect of the great house's design. The ratio between its height and base length, the precise angle of its faces, the relationship between internal chambers, all incorporate numerical values derived from astronomical observation. We build not according to arbitrary human preference, but in accordance with divine proportions revealed through celestial study. As the night grows older, conversation gradually subsides. Workers drift toward sleep, bodies demanding rest before dawn brings renewal of physical labor. Yet the knowledge shared during these informal gatherings continues working within minds, transforming understanding of our daily tasks, connecting muscle and stone to star and spirit. Before retiring to my sleeping mat, I perform a personal ritual, identifying specific stars that have particular meaning for my family tradition. My father taught me their names and positions, knowledge passed to him by his father before him. These personal connections to the celestial realm exist alongside the more formal astronomical system that guides the great house's construction, creating individual relationship with the cosmic order we collectively serve. Looking one final time at the star-filled sky, I silently acknowledge the dual guidance these celestial lights provide: practical direction for tomorrow's construction and spiritual orientation for the greater journey that awaits all who live and die beneath their eternal gaze. The stars that help us align massive stones with perfect precision are the same lights that will guide souls through the afterlife realms, their unchanging patterns providing constancy in both physical and spiritual navigation. The great house rises toward these stars through our daily labor, each course of stone bringing the structure incrementally closer to the heavens it seeks to connect with Earth. Perhaps this represents the deepest significance of our work, creating physical bridge between terrestrial and celestial, between temporary human existence and eternal cosmic order. As sleep approaches, the stars continue their stately procession overhead, indifferent to human observation, yet essential to our grandest creations. Tomorrow they will inform the placement of stones by day. Tonight they place dreams of cosmic order in the minds of those who build for eternity. I may never see the great house completed. This thought visits me occasionally as I work, not with despair or frustration, but as simple acknowledgement of time's reality. Construction has already spanned 17 flooding seasons since the first foundation stones were laid, and many more will pass before the final capstone takes its place at the structure's apex. Even if I remain healthy enough to continue working into old age, I will likely return to the earth before our creation reaches its full height. This recognition doesn't diminish my commitment to precise craftsmanship. If anything, it deepens my understanding of our work's true nature. The great house transcends individual lifespans, individual contributions. Each perfectly placed stone, each precisely measured angle, each carefully cut joint represents one small portion of collective achievement that spans generations. The monument rises not through any single person's effort, but through thousands of hands working in succession, each adding incrementally to what came before. Today, I shape a backing stone for the eastern face, my copper tools gradually revealing the form hidden within raw limestone. Though this particular block will soon disappear beneath outer casing stones, never to be seen again by human eyes, I work with the same care I would apply to the most visible elements. Every surface must be true, every angle exact, every dimension precisely as specified in the architect's instructions. Why such attention to parts that will remain forever hidden? Senbi once asked, observing my meticulous approach to interior stones. The hidden elements must be as perfect as the visible ones, I explained, for several reasons. Structurally, these backing stones distribute the immense weight that will press upon them for eternity. Spiritually, the gods see what human eyes cannot, and imperfection anywhere would offend divine order. And practically, our own integrity demands consistency. The craftsman who cuts corners when unobserved eventually loses the ability to achieve excellence even when watched. This philosophy extends throughout the great house's construction. Massive granite beams spanning interior chambers are finished to the same standard on all surfaces, though only one face will ever be visible. The mortar between stones is applied with identical care whether at ground level or hundreds of cubits above where no human will ever inspect it. The unseen majority of the monument receives the same devotion as its visible exterior. Such commitment requires particular relationship with time. Acceptance that our work extends beyond our individual lives, that we participate in something whose completion exists only in imagination during our lifetimes. The architects and astronomers possess detailed plans showing the finished monument. We ordinary workers must proceed on faith that our contributions serve the greater vision we may never personally witness. Do you ever imagine the completed great house? I ask Imhotep as we pause briefly for water during the day's heat. Every day, he responds, his gaze lifting toward the structure's growing height. I see it not as it stands now, but as it will appear when finished. Brilliant white casing stones catching the sun, perfect geometric form rising to precise apex, the whole standing in perfect alignment with the heavens. Though my body may return to Earth before that day arrives, part of my Ka will witness the achievement. This shared vision unites us despite knowing we work toward completion we individually may not see. Unlike farmers who plant, tend, and harvest within a single season, or hunters who follow, kill, and consume within immediate cycles, we builders of monuments participate in extended creation. Our reward comes not from final achievement, but from meaningful progression, from witnessing the structure rise course by course through our collective effort. The massive blocks we set today will rest in their positions for time beyond imagination. When the children watching our work grow old and die, these stones will remain unmoved. When their children's children become ancestors, remembered only in offering prayers, these stones will continue standing in perfect alignment. Even when the names of those who cut and placed them have vanished from all memory, the stones themselves will endure, still performing their function within the greater structure. This perspective becomes clearer as I grow older. In my first years working on the great house, I sometimes felt impatience, wanting to see significant progress each day, frustrated by the seemingly endless nature of the project. Now, approaching the middle point of a normal lifespan, I better understand the monumental time frame within which we operate. The great house rises not to human schedule but according to its own cosmic timing, each stone finding its place when properly prepared, the entire structure growing organically through accumulated contributions. My grandfather helped lay the foundation stones. Kamoset often reminds younger workers. My father shaped core blocks for the lower third. I have worked on the middle sections. My son and grandsons will contribute to the upper portions. Though, none of us will witness the entire process from beginning to end. Our family's hands will have touched the monument throughout its creation. This intergenerational connection provides different satisfaction than immediate completion could offer. We participate not just in physical construction, but in continuity of purpose, techniques, and vision passing from one generation to the next. The knowledge flowing from experienced workers to younger ones ensures the project's integrity across decades, maintaining consistent standards despite changing personnel. Even those who have died continue contributing through the knowledge and techniques they developed. My father, 5 years in the Western lands, remains present in the specialized cutting methods he refined and taught to others, in the problem-solving approaches he developed for particularly challenging stones, in the work ethic he instilled, in those who trained under him. Though his body no longer shapes stone, his wisdom continues guiding those who do. The great house thus becomes more than physical monument. It embodies accumulated human knowledge, skill, and purpose transmitted across generations. Each precisely angled block, each perfectly fitted joint represents not just individual craftsmanship, but collective wisdom distilled through decades of experience, refined through thousands of hands, preserved through careful teaching and learning. This continuity extends beyond individual families or work crews to the entire civilization that supports our effort. Farmers who never touch stone contribute through growing food that nourishes workers. Sailors who never visit the construction site participate by transporting materials from distant quarries. Scribes who never lift copper tools assist through maintaining records and calculations essential to the project's organization. The great house rises through coordinated effort of the entire two lands, most participants never seeing the physical structure they help create. Perhaps most remarkably, the monument's completion exists more perfectly in shared imagination than it ever will in physical reality. The architect's vision, captured in plans and models, shows geometric perfection impossible in actual construction. Though we strive for absolute precision, minute variations inevitably occur when theoretical design meets practical execution. Yet the ideal great house exists completely in collective conceptualization, a perfect form toward which physical creation reaches. As afternoon progresses and my assigned stone nears completion, I find myself contemplating who might eventually work with blocks that will rest upon this one. Perhaps someone not yet born, a stoneworker who will learn from those I'm currently training, applying techniques with distant roots in my own practice. This connection across time provides deeper satisfaction than merely shaping today's stone. I contribute not just to physical construction, but to continuation of craft knowledge that extends indefinitely forward. We build more than a monument, my father often said. We build a tradition of excellence that outlasts individual lives. This perspective illuminates the true nature of our work on the great house. While the physical structure itself represents remarkable achievement, the systems of knowledge, technical skill, organizational capacity, and spiritual purpose developed through its creation may constitute even greater accomplishment. The monument serves as vessel containing and preserving these civilizational capabilities, protecting them against time's erosion through their embodiment in enduring stone. As the workday ends and I set aside tools until tomorrow, I allow myself brief indulgence in imagining the completed great house. Its smooth white faces gleaming in sunlight, its perfect geometrical form rising toward heaven, its precise alignments connecting earth to cosmic order. Though I may never witness this reality with physical eyes, the vision itself provides satisfaction and purpose. I have participated in creating something that transcends ordinary human limitation. something that will speak to eternity long after. My name is forgotten. This, perhaps, is the true completion we work toward. Not merely finished monument, but connection to something beyond individual existence. Through contributing to creation that outlasts us, we touch immortality more tangibly than through any other human endeavor. The great house will stand when nothing else of our lives remains, carrying something of our collective spirit forward through millennia yet to come. Knowledge flows through hands more effectively than through words alone. I observe this truth daily as I guide Senbi and 2 other younger workers through the specialized technique for cutting channel grooves and backing stones. Though I explain the process carefully, how to hold the copper chisel at precisely the right angle, how to gauge the force of each strike, how to read the stone's subtle resistance, true understanding comes only when their own hands perform the actions, developing the particular sensitivity that no verbal instruction can fully convey. Like this? Asks Kay, demonstrating the cutting motion I've shown him. His grip remains slightly awkward, his wrist too rigid. Almost, I respond, adjusting his fingers on the wooden mallet. Hold it as you would a bird. Firmly enough to prevent escape, but gently enough to avoid harm. The tool should feel like an extension of your arm, not a separate object. This knowledge transmission, from experienced craftsman to apprentice, from one generation to the next, represents another form of construction occurring alongside the great house itself. While we build the physical monument stone by stone, we simultaneously build continuity of craft knowledge, ensuring techniques refined through generations remain available for future projects long after current practitioners have joined the ancestors. The formal apprenticeship system provides structure for this knowledge flow. Young men typically begin around 12 years of age, initially performing simple tasks while observing experienced workers. Gradually, they receive instruction in basic techniques, advancing to more complex skills as they demonstrate readiness. By approximately 25 years of age, those with sufficient aptitude achieve recognition as full craftsmen, capable of working independently while beginning to train others in turn. Watch how the stone responds differently when struck along the grain versus against it, I demonstrate, creating 2 small demonstration cuts on a waste fragment. The sound changes subtly. Listen for the higher pitch that indicates you're working with the stone's natural structure rather than fighting against it. These nuanced observations, how stone sounds when properly struck, how it feels under the chisel, how its dust forms particular patterns when cut correctly, constitute knowledge impossible to preserve in written form. Unlike mathematical calculations or architectural plans that scribes can record on papyrus, craft wisdom lives primarily in the bodies of practitioners, in muscle memory developed through years of repetitive action, guided by careful attention. The transmission requires physical proximity, direct observation, guided practice, and immediate feedback. Craftsman and apprentice working side by side through countless repetitions until the knowledge resides not just in the younger worker's mind, but in his hands, eyes, and ears. This embodied understanding ultimately becomes so integrated that experienced stoneworkers perform complex operations without conscious thought, their bodies knowing before their minds what each situation requires. My father taught me to listen. With my fingers, I tell the apprentices as they practice. When properly attuned, your hands can detect flaws hidden within stone that eyes cannot see, can feel the subtle variation in density that suggests where a block might be cut most effectively. This sensory knowledge extends beyond stone cutting to every specialized craft contributing to the great house's construction. Rope makers develop particular sensitivity to fiber quality and proper tension. Mortar mixers recognize perfect consistency through touch more reliably than through formal measurement. Sledge operators feel almost imperceptible shifts in weight distribution that indicate potential danger before visible signs appear. Such embodied wisdom accumulates gradually through careers spanning decades, each craftsman adding incremental refinements to techniques learned from predecessors. My own practice incorporates subtle modifications to methods my father taught me. which themselves evolved from techniques he learned from his father. The knowledge flowing through our family line stretches back through generations of stoneworkers, each contributing small improvements to collective understanding. The copper saw catches differently when approaching a hidden fossil, I explain, guiding Senbi's hands through the particular sensation. Feel that slight drag? It signals something embedded in the limestone, perhaps a shell or creature preserved, from when this stone formed at the bottom of an ancient sea. This specialized knowledge transmission occurs throughout the construction site, creating multiple streams of craft wisdom flowing alongside each other. The drillers develop and share techniques for boring precise holes through granite using copper tubes with sand abrasives. The polishers refine methods for achieving perfectly smooth surfaces using increasingly fine stones and sand. The setters perfect approaches for moving massive blocks into position with gaps between them narrower than a reed's thickness. Why does each crew maintain its own tools? Asks Kay, noticing how carefully the stone-cutting implements are segregated from those used by other specialized workers. Partly for practical reasons. Tools develop particular characteristics through use that make them most effective for specific tasks, I explain. But also, because tools carry the accumulated wisdom of those who have used them before. My father's copper chisels, which I inherited when he joined the ancestors, somehow retain something of his technique. New tools require seasoning before they perform as effectively. This perspective, that knowledge resides not just in human practitioners but somehow within the tools themselves, reflects our understanding of how wisdom transfers across generations. The implements passed from experienced craftsman to apprentice carry more than mere functionality. They contain something of the skill developed through their previous use, an intangible quality that transcends the physical object itself. The knowledge transmission extends beyond specific techniques to broader understanding of the craft's principles. As the apprentices progress from basic skills toward more advanced operations, I gradually introduce the underlying concepts that inform proper practice. How stone forms differently depending on its type and origin, how structural integrity relates to cutting approach, how environmental conditions affect working properties. Limestone quarried from the northern cliffs responds differently than that from across the river, I explain, showing samples that appear nearly identical to untrained eyes but contain subtle variations obvious to experienced workers. The northern stone accepts finer detail but breaks more unpredictably when cut against its natural bedding. The eastern stone provides greater structural strength but resists detailed carving. This layered knowledge, technical skill supported by theoretical understanding, distinguishes master craftsmen from mere laborers. While any strong man might learn basic stone cutting through simple repetition, true mastery requires comprehending why particular approaches work under specific circumstances, allowing adaptation to unique challenges rather than mechanical application of memorized techniques. You're not merely learning to cut stone, I tell the apprentices as our day's instruction concludes. You're learning to read stone, to understand its language, to interpret its internal structure, to negotiate with its particular nature rather than imposing uniform treatment regardless of its individual character. This philosophical dimension of craft knowledge typically transfers later in the training process, after apprentices have developed sufficient technical foundation to appreciate deeper principles. My father waited until my 10th year of stone work before sharing the more profound aspects of the craft, the almost spiritual relationship between worker and material. The ethical dimensions of creating structures meant to last beyond individual lifetimes, the responsibility of preserving and extending knowledge developed through countless generations. As the sun approaches the western horizon and we prepare to store tools until tomorrow, I observe the apprentices practicing techniques demonstrated earlier. Their movements already show slight improvement, hands beginning to develop the particular memory that will eventually make these operations as natural as breathing. Though full mastery remains years distant, the knowledge has begun its transfer, establishing itself in younger bodies that will carry it forward when mine eventually returns to Earth. This transmission represents perhaps the most important construction occurring at the Great House, more significant even than the impressive physical monument itself. While stone might stand for millennia, the knowledge required to shape it could disappear within a single generation if not carefully preserved through deliberate teaching and learning. The true legacy of our work extends beyond visible achievement to include this continuous flow of understanding across time. Before departing, I perform a small ritual my father taught me, one I've now shared with these apprentices. Each of us places a hand on the stone we've worked today, acknowledging both what we've given to it and what it has taught us in return. This gesture recognizes the reciprocal nature of craft knowledge, not merely human mastery imposed upon passive material, but ongoing conversation between practitioner and substance, each continuously informing the other through direct engagement. The stone remembers your touch, I tell them, echoing words passed through generations of craftsmen. And your hands remember the stone. Together, they create knowledge that survives when both eventually return to dust. As we walk toward evenings, other activities, bathing in the river, sharing meals, enjoying brief rest before tomorrow's labor, I feel the peculiar satisfaction that comes from participating in knowledge transmission, extending beyond individual lifespan. Though I will eventually join my father in the Western lands, something of my understanding will continue flowing through these younger hands, maintaining continuity of craft wisdom that connects countless generations of builders across time's vast expanse. The stone endures. When the final craftsman sets down his tools and returns to the black earth from which all life emerges, when the last offering priest completes his rituals and follows his predecessors into the Western lands, when even Pharaoh's name has faded from living memory, still the Great House will stand, its massive presence defying time's erosion. This permanence beyond human lifespan represents both our work's purpose and its deepest meaning. I contemplate this legacy as I complete what may be my final contribution to the monument. After 32 flooding seasons of shaping stone, my hands have begun to betray me. The joints stiffening, the grip weakening, the precise control gradually diminishing. Though my knowledge remains intact, my body can no longer execute the most demanding aspects of the craft with the perfection the Great House requires. Rather than compromise the work's quality, I have requested reassignment to training younger workers, ensuring my accumulated understanding continues flowing into the project even as my physical participation diminishes. Today, I shaped one last stone, a backing block for the eastern face, its proportions requiring the specialized cutting techniques I've refined throughout my career. My movements were slower than in previous years, but retained the precision developed through decades of practice. As I worked, I silently acknowledged this transition, grateful for the privilege of contributing to something that will outlast not just my individual life but countless generations to come. The Great House represents human defiance against impermanence. While ordinary structures serve immediate needs and gradually return to Earth, this monument deliberately reaches toward eternity. Every aspect of its design and construction acknowledges this aspiration. The massive scale that resists natural degradation, the precise engineering that ensures structural integrity across millennia, the carefully selected materials chosen for maximum durability. We build not merely for contemporary function, but for perpetual endurance. What will people think when they see the Great House in times to come? Senbi asked recently, as we observed the massive structure from across the river, its growing form, already dominating the western horizon. They will know that those who built it understood something profound about existence, I replied after considering his question. That beyond the temporary concerns of daily life, exists the possibility of touching eternity, of creating something that participates in divine permanence rather than human transience. This philosophical dimension elevates our work beyond mere construction. While farmers produce sustenance that perishes within seasons, and craftsmen create objects that last perhaps a lifetime, we who build the Great House participate in achievement that approaches immortality. The monument will stand when nothing else of our civilization remains, carrying something of our collective soul forward through time beyond imagination. The stone itself provides fitting metaphor for this aspiration, formed over countless years, through processes transcending human timescales. Limestone and granite already contain antiquity before we extract them from Earth's embrace. By shaping these ancient materials into deliberate form aligned with cosmic order, we create dialogue between geological time and human intention, between nature's patience and our own deliberate purpose. My final stone now takes its place within the growing monument, disappearing into the massive structure it helps create. Like most of the millions of blocks forming the great house, it becomes invisible as individual element, its identity subsumed into collective achievement. This too carries philosophical significance, the surrender of individual recognition, to participate in something far greater than personal accomplishment. Even Pharaoh's name may eventually fade from memory, observed Kmwaset during one of our evening philosophical discussions, expressing a thought that would be dangerous in more public settings. But the great house itself will remain, testifying to what humans can create when unified in purpose across generations. This recognition, that the physical monument might outlast even the identity of the divine ruler for whom we build it, suggests the work's ultimate meaning. Beyond serving Pharaoh's journey to immortality, beyond demonstrating royal power and divine connection, the great house establishes human capability to create permanence in an otherwise transitory existence. It proves our potential to transcend individual mortality through collective achievement. As I prepare to transition from active stone cutting to teaching role, I find myself reflecting on this transcendent purpose. My body will continue aging, eventually joining the countless workers who lived and died during the great house's multi-generational construction. Yet something of my contribution will remain embedded in the monument. Not just the stones I personally shaped, but the knowledge I've transmitted to younger craftsmen who will continue the work after I depart. This continuity provides comfort as I face my own mortality. While my individual name may disappear from all record, my participation in something approaching eternity offers different form of survival. The great house will carry forward not just physically shaped stones, but the accumulated wisdom, spiritual purpose, and human aspiration that informed their placement. We leave more than our labor in the stone, my father told me during his final days of work, his hands too arthritic to continue, but his mind still perfectly lucid. We leave something of our ka, our essential spirit. The monument contains not just physical effort, but fragments of soul from everyone who contributed to its creation. This spiritual dimension transcends the considerable engineering achievement the great house represents. Beyond demonstrating mastery of material and mathematical precision, the monument embodies collective spiritual aspiration, human reach toward divine permanence, mortal participation in immortal order. Each precisely placed stone, each perfectly executed angle, each carefully designed chamber serves both practical function and metaphysical purpose. The alignment with celestial bodies ensures not just architectural accuracy, but cosmic connection. The perfect proportions represent not merely aesthetic preference, but divine mathematics. The massive scale establishes not just physical impressiveness, but metaphysical significance. We build simultaneously in stone and in meaning, creating structure that serves both tangible and intangible functions across time. As twilight approaches and workers begin returning to village and camp, I remain slightly longer at the construction site, watching how fading light transforms the great house's growing form. The massive structure appears both solid and ethereal in this transitional illumination, its physical presence undeniable, yet somehow transcendent, bridging material and spiritual realms, just as it bridges human and divine time frames. This vision, the monument suspended between earthly materiality and celestial aspiration, captures the essential duality of our work. We engage with the most physical aspects of existence, cutting stone, moving massive weight, shaping resistant material, yet simultaneously participate in the most metaphysical dimensions of being, creating permanence, establishing cosmic alignment, manifesting divine order in physical form. My final stone has now disappeared completely into the greater structure, indistinguishable from thousands of others, yet essential to the monument's integrity. Though I can no longer identify its specific location, I know it remains, performing its function within the collective achievement. This integration provides apt metaphor for individual participation in something that transcends personal identity. The surrender of separate recognition to become part of greater permanence. As night fully claims the western horizon, and the first stars appear above the great house's silhouette, I begin my walk toward the workers' village, body tired but spirit peaceful. Though my hands will shape no more stones for this eternal monument, my knowledge will continue flowing through younger craftsmen I've trained, though my name will eventually fade from all memory. Something of my understanding and purpose will remain embedded in the great house itself, preserved in stone that defies time's erosion. This legacy, not individual recognition, but participation in collective achievement that approaches immortality, represents the true reward for 3 decades devoted to building with permanence in mind. The monument will stand when nothing else remains of those who created it, carrying forward not just physical form, but the aspirations, knowledge, and spiritual purpose that guided its creation. The stone endures, and through it, something of us endures as well, not as identifiable individuals, but as participants in humanity's most profound conversation with time itself. The great house rises from earth toward heaven, from temporary toward permanent, from human limitation toward divine possibility. Though I may not witness its completion, I depart my active role with gratitude for having contributed to something that will speak to eternity long after my journey to the Western lands concludes. In the stone, we live forever. The desert night enfolds us now, stars wheeling overhead in patterns unchanged since the first stone was placed for the great house. Their eternal light connecting us to all who have gazed upward in wonder across countless generations, their silent passage marking time that flows beyond human measure, yet somehow touches each individual life with both its permanence and its inevitable passage. As you drift toward sleep, imagine the whisper of sand against ancient limestone, the cool touch of evening breeze against surfaces that have witnessed thousands of years of sunrises and sunsets, the profound silence that surrounds these monuments when human voices fade, and only stone remains to commune with the cosmos that inspired their creation and alignment. The journey of the pyramid builders continues through you, through this moment of connection across vast expanses of time, their hands somehow touching yours across the veil that separates us from those who came before, their knowledge and purpose finding echo in your own contemplation of what remains when human lives conclude, but human achievement endures. Feel yourself becoming part of this eternal conversation between mortality and permanence, between the brief spark of individual consciousness and the enduring light of collective creation. Your own thoughts merging with those of countless others who have pondered these same monuments and the hands that built them, creating an unbroken chain of wonder that stretches from ancient Nile shores to wherever you now rest. Let the weight of your awareness gradually lighten, like a stone block finally released from ropes to find its perfect resting place within greater structure, your consciousness settling into the peaceful embrace of sleep, just as the K of ancient builders eventually found rest while their work remained to speak through millennia. Good night, time traveler. May your rest be as profound as the foundations of the great house in your dreams, as limitless as the imagination that first envisioned eternity in stone.